What's going on, Bulls Nation? Welcome into the CHGO Bulls podcast, coming to you live from our studios here in West Loop, downtown Chicago. I'm Pack Bulls _Pack, joined by Big Day Bale, BAWL Sports, Will the Go Gottlieb, Will _Gottlieb, our pal and producer on the controls, the one and only Young Spathis, at Joey Spathis. Fun stuff to get to today. Great write-up on our guy Io DeSumo in Forbes about what he's been doing in the community here in Chicago in the offseason. Very fascinating story that dropped on the Bulls offseason with words from Marc Eversley, from Jamal Collier of ESPN. We will talk about all of the interesting nitty-gritty details in there. But first and foremost, gentlemen, thanks for holding down the fort yesterday. Everybody have a good weekend?
Yes, and I have to say something because I forgot to say it yesterday, and it just hit me while you were talking. So thanks for being here. Maybe it was because I'm sitting in this chair and it reminded me of that. I have to send a shout. What the hell was that? Okay. I have to send a shout out.
Not 2 minutes in, Joey already banded his producer's chair.
Shout out to, I hope I'm saying your name right, but is it Smitha or Smitha? I can't remember which one. But if I'm saying it wrong, you're welcome to correct me. But shout out to her and her husband, Rob. One of my good friends, Sean, shout out Circus Sports, hit me up. He was on vacation in San Diego. And
Whale's vagina.
He said this couple came up to him and his wife and got to a conversation, and they started talking about basketball. And they found out he was from Chicago. He said, right when I was about to tell them about CHGO Bulls, they told me about CHGO Bulls and how much they love it. It's their favorite. They rarely miss an episode. The wife loves us, man, thinks we're awesome. And, yeah, I told them I would definitely give them a shout-out, so I'm giving them that shout-out. Thank y'all for being fans all the way out there in San Diego and enjoying what we do.
It's funny you mentioned that because I wrote this down in Slack to also make a note of it.
I was just going to ask you.
Because on Friday, I went to the Region out in Roscoe, your neck of the woods, and ran into Matt, who was working there. And he recognized me, said what's up, said he loved the show, so I wanted to shout him out too.
Not me, different Matt.
Different Matt. Okay.
Strong mustache, a la regular season Peck.
Could have been my doppelganger.
He was great. The burger was great. And yeah, it was awesome. He was just like, I mostly recognized your voice.
How many times have you ever heard that before? I mostly recognize your voice.
Well, I think he listens probably to the podcast more.
A pod listener as opposed to a YouTube viewer.
I'm just saying you're more recognized for the quaff. And so I'm saying how it's rare that someone would say they just recognize you strictly off the voice.
I don't get recognized very much, so it's always a surreal thing. My friend who I was with was like laughing at me the whole time. So.
You mean because it's awesome that people enjoy your work and it's cool? That's it. Yes. Thank y'all for enjoying what we do all across this wonderful nation, including the ones right here in the chat. And Matt, you are also gone, sir. What? Tell us about your trip. Regale us with tales of your trip away.
I mean, some of that I'll keep to myself. I had a nice, peaceful weekend up in Mish.
Nice, peaceful weekend in Mish.
Beautiful weather. Spent most of it out on the lake. The parts that I wasn't on the lake, we were at the brewery. Yeah. Did not want to come home yesterday. Yeah. But here I am, and I'm happy to be back.
Oh, that sounded fun. Need to do a take two and come back with that one a little better.
Did I or did I not, as always, bring you guys treats on my return from Michigan?
You did bring treats. I don't know if you got the same thing I got, Will, but beer, corn.
I haven't dug in yet, but it looks like beer and corn.
Yeah, beer, corn, and barbecue sauce, but it's apple butter barbecue sauce.
Ooh.
Is what I got there.
Someone else got applesauce and someone else got salsa.
I got applesauce.
He got applesauce.
That means Will got salsa.
Salsa. Okay, bet. I like this.
All of which I have eaten and can vouch for. Delicious. But also some fresh yesterday picked corn on the cob. Because, vegetables.
That's the only thing you allow on the grill. That's a vegetable. It's corn on the cob.
But honestly, best way to go, just boil that up.
Boil it up and do it, baby.
Don't even need butter. You can throw butter or salt and pepper on it if you want to, but fresh summer sweet corn, man.
That's how we did it when we were coming up, baby.
The very best.
Boiled. A little butter on it, bite right into it. We good to go.
Yes, sir. All right, so in case you missed it, or maybe you couldn't because I believe it was under the ESPN Plus paywall, Jamal Collier dropped a very long column this morning about the Bulls offseason with some words from Bulls GM Marc Eversley, talking about their sort of, their plan of attack with these changes that they said that they were going to make with the roster and where it stands now. And I am okay with some of what we heard in this column from Marc Eversley, and some of it I'm not buying.
Okay.
But so let's just start with this. He said, quote, Eversley, There's no appetite in our building to go young and just blow it all up. We've gone young. We've got players who are experienced to give us a greater opportunity to have a longer runway for sustainability to winning meaningful games for a longer time. End quote. He and or AK have said some version of that since they started making, the Caruso trade and the DeMar sign and trade.
Yeah.
And it's not about accumulating draft capital. They wanted young players who still have potential for improvement and growth, but who all have NBA experience, save, of course, the rookie Modest Buzelis. The part where I am losing Eversley here and their collective logic is when he says opportunity for a longer runway for sustainability to winning meaningful games for a longer stretch of time. You're kind of taking a couple of steps back without wanting to bottom all the way out to prioritize lots of lottery picks. I understand what he's saying there, but I don't know that this collection of young players with NBA experience will get them anywhere further than back to where they are now, which is kind of in the middle of the middle and not good enough to actually compete.
I see that point. I don't feel differently, but I guess I feel slightly differently because I don't know what they are, the young players. It's hard for me to make that assessment right now. I know Zach is. I know what those guys are, but
I think
as
we
far
do
as
know,
Modest,
though,
but Modest, I don't know. And
sure, but
a couple other guys, I honestly just don't truly know who they are, especially in roles that they haven't had before because DeMar's not there. So some of these guys are going to be in roles all season long that they've never been in. So, and being asked to do certain things that they've never really been asked to do. I don't know Josh Giddey's impact of what certain things will be on this Bulls team. I don't know what Lonzo's going to look like when he gets back. For me, it's too many questions to go with that, but I'm not against it because I can see where your logic is on that. So it makes sense about what he's saying, about what you're saying.
I hear what you're saying, Dave, and I agree to a certain extent, but I also think that if you really sit here and say you don't know what you have in these guys, it's ignoring some of the negative things that we know about them, right? It's ignoring Giddey getting played off the floor in the playoffs and not starting second halves and being a complete zero on offense if he doesn't have the ball in his hands. It's ignoring the fact that, you were going to have the 11th pick anyway. That rookie isn't this new foundational piece because it's he would have been here regardless of whether they kept DeRozan and Caruso and moved on from Zach. That to me, that's not really they've eliminated two pieces and brought in Jalen Smith. That's kind of the roster this year.
Wait, are you looking at this that I'm saying this is a good thing, that they could be good?
No.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying,
okay, go ahead.
I'm saying not at all. I'm saying I think when Mark says there's no appetite in our building to go young and just blow it all up, he's basically banking on this obviously small sample size, but multiple seasons in some cases of information about some of these players and banking on the fact that they can change and improve in this new context. And I don't think that's a wrong thing, but I do think it necessarily ignores some of their flaws in saying we got a 21-year-old that we can build around. It's that ignores the fact that he's clearly a flawed player and that you have to pay him to the point where he's not going to be a value contract anymore. And so I think you're right, Matt. Ultimately, and I said this on the show with Mark, I think I did a good job for kind of the first time really articulating my full kind of thoughts on the way. On the back? I mean, no, it's more of the opposite.
Self-flex. Yes, it is.
It's more the opposite. I don't think I've done a good enough job explaining my thoughts on this, but I think on that show on Friday, I did a much better job to explain where and how I feel about the direction things are going. And ultimately, I think they've opened up more doors for themselves. Remember, we used the analogy of there's 100 doors, and they used to only have 5 that got them towards a title. Now maybe they have 20 or 25, and that's nice, but it's still a very small section of the entire spectrum.
Sure.
And they could have 50 or 75 doors opened that could have taken them in those different pathways. And I think when you try to take these shortcuts and build this way, more likely than not, you're going to end up in the middle. And that's where they're trying to get out of right now. And so building a new thing that gets them back to where they are, it's well, what are we doing? So I'm not saying that they don't have any avenues towards being a better team, because I think they do. I just think the line they're walking is a really challenging one. It's going to require a higher degree of accuracy on all of their picks and all of the guys that they bring in. because they don't have enough like ammunition to like take multiple shots. And so I think that's a really risky way to do it. And I think, like I said, more likely than not, it's going to end up back in the middle, but at least it will be young and fun. That's great. But at the end of the day, like if you're trying to add 10 wins, which is what AK said, if you're trying to build a championship team, which is what AK said, are they really setting themselves up to do that right now? And like, I don't think they are.
Yeah. Well, two things. One, the reason I say I don't know, because I don't know if they're good enough to build themselves back up to get to the middle. That's why I keep saying I don't know what these young guys are. I don't know. They could come in and win 25 games. Yeah. Like I don't know. Like I don't know if they're good enough to do that or not. And again, that's why I'm like, I got to see them in these positions to whether I can actually agree with them actually being a team that can end up in the middle. I can see how it could happen, but I'm like, I also can see how it couldn't, how they could be worse than that. Yeah. You know what I mean? And that's how I look at it. The other part is, did you hear how Will just said he can properly articulate his stuff only with Mark K? I think that's just what he told us right there, man.
He's a goat whisperer.
Yeah, that's what he is. He's
I love
out
that
Mark
episode,
K.
by the way.
Shout
it's
out.
Great to see our guy Mark.
It was good to see him, man. Shout out to him.
But yeah, so like that's where I am, Dave. Like I can see a world in which this new collection of young guys, collectively and as individual players, take some developmental steps and make some progress this upcoming season. And it might not mean a Bulls playoff season, but that they get better as a group and that they improve as individuals. I can also very realistically see maybe all of that happens and there is some improvement, but to get back to where you are now, which you needed DeMar DeRozan to do, you needed Alex Caruso to do. If you do eventually find a new home for Zach and or Vooch, and we'll get to that a little bit later, but then where are those other steps coming from? Because to me, and it goes to your whole like quick fix thing that you were mentioning, Will, as far as their earlier approach, and now that's put them in this position.
Steps,
The other part of that Eversley quote from Collier's report this morning saying, quote, I don't want to a year from now be winning 15 games and focusing on the lottery. We have an opportunity to roll out these younger players who give us an opportunity to turn this around, maybe not quicker, but in a more pragmatic approach than just looking at the future and building through the draft, end quote. Again, I see what Marc Eversley is saying, but just because you're not doing the hasty approach that you tried before that kind of backfired and saying, hey, pragmatic approach, let's build this thing slowly, then you're just talking about building something slowly that might still only get you back to the middle where you decided you didn't want to be.
Right. And you did all this to get away from it. Right.
The place to get out of the middle when you aren't a team that could, spend like crazy because your owner doesn't want you to, doesn't let you, and you aren't, for whatever reasons, a big free agent destination, then what is the other direction of actually building it? And maybe it's pragmatic and maybe it's not a quick fix. It's going down and increasing your odds of bringing in, via the draft, a franchise-changing talent. And that is the part of Eversley's logic that I do not freaking get when I read these quotes.
He just walked back in.
I mean, that's exactly right. The whole point of being bad is to put yourself in a position to get a franchise-changing player in the draft. If you're going half-ass at that, you're going to end up with the 7th pick or the 10th pick, and that's exactly what they did from 2017 till 2020 when they realized that they weren't taking the right approach and they didn't have the stomach. So it's like nothing has changed to me. I think it's like repackaging the same product, and maybe you draw in a little bit more excitement with younger players. Maybe it's a little bit more exciting, and maybe you do have more upside because you have this younger group. But I think also like the salary cap element of this, you're going to have to pay these guys really soon. And then that takes away the free agency tool that you have to bring in that franchise guy. So if it's not going to be via the draft and you can't get this done before you have to pay Kobe and Giddey, then you can't do it on 2 of the 3 ways. You have to find a trade. And we just haven't seen them commit to getting A+ quality talent via the trade market. So I just don't see, and that's really a question I think we need to ask them at Media Day is like, okay, if you're not going to bottom out, if you are not going to be able to sign a guy in free agency because you want to keep your guys, how do you get a star player in here? Because that's how that's the requisite in order to win at a high level.
Time. That's why I paused.
Well, let's pick this conversation back up on the other side. Still lots to get to from this Jamal Collier report on ESPN Plus this morning, including some weird stuff about Zach LaVine. We will get to that coming up next.
Ray! Chrysler Dodge Jeep and Ram. It's your number one draft pick this summer to find the perfect new car just for you. This July, shop a wider selection of vehicles at Ray CDJR and score new lower prices across their huge inventory during the Make This the Summer event. For a limited time, lease the new 2024 Jeep Compass Latitude Luxe for only $189 a month, or shop over 125 vehicles priced under $20,000. Let the amazing team at Ray CDJR help you land the perfect vehicle at the perfect price, because with Ray's Price Promise, the numbers you're hearing now are the same prices you can expect to shop in-store and online. That's because Ray's Price Promise means no price changing, no add-ons, and no hidden fees ever. Since they prioritize affordability for their customers, hurry to Ray CDJR today and shop one of Chicago area's largest inventories. Then drive home with more money in your hip pocket than you've ever expected. So if you're in the market for a new vehicle, then you have to check out the team at Ray Chrysler Dodge Jeep and Ram, because they are the only team that we recommend. Visit them today on Route 12 in Fox Lake. For more information, visit Ray CDJR in Fox Lake or raycdjr.com. Serving the community since 1963.
Today's show also brought to you by our friends at Family Farms, whose culinary journey is woven with passion, dedication, and a commitment to crafting the best, wait for it, bacon-wrapped chicken. Hello! A timeless delicacy that has tantalized taste buds since 1974. Almost as long as Ray selling them cars and trucks.
Facts.
Join Family Farms on this flavorful adventure where every bite tells a story of tradition, quality, and the enduring spirit of Family Farms. Now you can find Family Farms bacon wrapped chicken even easier. Look for them in the meat department at your local Woodman's, Mariano's, or Burkott's. Maybe you're craving a taste of home without leaving your home. I know I always am, because I am lazy. Check out baconwrappedshrimp.com, baconwrappedchicken.com, or click on the link for their Amazon store, which also includes the legendary Rocky Rococo's Italian Sausage. And to find out when their new amazing Cajun Nation flavors will become available with an authentic Louisiana bite. Experience the flavor that's become a family favorite for generations. Visit your nearest Woodman's, Mariano's, Burkott's, or find them on Amazon. Family Farms. Go to baconwrappedchicken.com.
Sexy.
You see that bacon wrapped chicken right there?
Sexy.
On the subheader? Oh, my God.
Look at it.
Two
Have
of
you
my
ever
favorite
had
things.
bacon wrapped chicken?
Of course.
You, Will?
Never.
Joey? Seems like you guys are in for a treat, according to Matt Peck and Family Farms.
Of course.
Shout out.
I mean,
Can't wait to try it.
it's a delicious meat being wrapped around by even
Another
more delicious meat.
Yes.
I mean, bacon wrapped anything makes the anything better,
Lawrence agrees.
except for I was
Bacon wrapped kale?
eating out at this nice restaurant over the weekend,
Flex.
and there
That is
was
a flex.
got a flank steak entree, and it was some
super
well
flex.
cut, delicious flank steak, and the sides were like, okay, some yummy potatoes, and the potatoes had sour cream and like bacon, but then the other part of the side was Brussels sprouts.
Love Brussels
What's
sprouts.
the problem with this? I don't see it.
The Brussels sprouts were stealing some of the deliciousness of the bacon, and I think they were like sautéed in some bacon bits and some bacon grease.
That's smart.
And
It sounds amazing. That means you ate the Brussels sprouts.
no, I didn't.
What?
I sorted them out.
It was dipped in bacon grease.
Yeah, that's just Brussels sprouts robbing the bacon of the deliciousness and using it to mask something that tastes gross.
I don't know, man. You love bacon, dog. Like,
That's what I'm saying.
so why wouldn't you eat it?
just eat
Because
the
it's
bacon.
dipped in the sauce of the bacon.
Shout out Charlie the Bacon Guy too, by the
Yeah,
way.
shout out to him for sure.
That spread over here in our office kitchen.
Oh, he always does his thing.
Tremendous.
He does
That
his thing.
Jardiniere bacon.
I'm a little shocked though.
God.
Turn down bacon
Brussels
grease.
sprouts are gross.
Yeah. Turn down bacon grease.
Give me a different delivery system if you want to add bacon to something.
A different delivery system to add bacon to something. Okay, fair enough.
Like chicken at Family Farms.
You would eat it in your salad though, right? Bacon.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Okay, all right.
I don't really enjoy eating salads without bacon in them.
Fair point.
It's not a salad if it doesn't have bacon
Not
in
a
it.
salad if it doesn't have bacon, is what he said.
Okay. Shout out everybody hanging out with us on YouTube. Hit that like button if you are. Some people chiming in on this, Eversley quotes from Collier's comments. Sports Chicago style saying clowns to the left, jokers to the right. Here we are stuck in the middle with you. Jailbreak saying, I think all this has to be about player development. Gregory Gorszewski, hoping I came close on that last name, saying you tank to get a superstar and build around that player. We don't know how to develop young players, and we'll never be good unless you have a superstar talent.
Correct.
Trigger Daddy Dexter 64 saying taking Josh Giddey over picks demonstrates that they still have pressure from ownership to sell tickets. They can rebuild as long as seats are filled. We're doomed because Josh Giddey is such a big ticket seller. I mean, I think maybe Cooper Flagg next year would be a bigger ticket seller than Josh Giddey. So look, the other piece of what Eversley was saying that I think is interesting is the focusing. Hey, we're much younger now. But also acknowledging, well, Zach's still here, and Vooch is still here. Eversley said, quote, not that it's not about Zach or Vooch anymore, but we're giving these young guys an opportunity to see how much they can grow. We're not so focused on being a top 6 seed, cool, or being in the play-in, great. We're focusing on developing this group every single day and see how much better they can get over the next year, end quote. So to me, that Eversley's already kind of saying to the media and and then transitively to Bulls fans everywhere, we're not judging next season on wins, right? We're going to see how much better this young core of players can get.
But we also don't want to be the worst team in the league. Like, they're just hedging against everything they're saying. And in doing
they're hedging in every direction.
They're not committing to anything. And when you don't commit to anything, it's really hard to be the best at anything. It's really hard to be the worst at anything. And in a season where you're trying to be one of the worst teams in the league and get one of the best picks, you kind of need to commit to that. Or
but
vice
you can't
versa.
verbally do it, right?
Correct.
Sure. But vice versa.
That's what I was.
It's the same thing going the other way. When they wouldn't commit fully to the team that they had, they wouldn't bring in any new talent, and that's how you end up in the middle. And my point is, yes, they're not going to say that, but if you look at the actions, signing Jalen Smith to me, signing bringing Josh Giddey instead of picks for Caruso, it's like you're trying to be good and young. And while it's better to be young than old, like, it's not necessarily leading you to being good, but it is preventing you from being all the way bad. And I know you're saying they could still win 25 games. That's possible. But like, they may need to win 15 games in order to secure a top 5 pick, which is really what they need if they want to get a franchise changing talent, which is really what they need if they are trying to be good ever. So to me, it's like, you do kind of have to, even if it's just like a 1 year, 2 year, we're going to be really bad these next 2 years. We've already got this core. Look what we've got. But we need to get that one guy. We're going to do that in these next 2 years. And then we're going to build forward with a foundational piece on a rookie scale contract. And then 5 or 6 guys who we like and who are really young and who can build forward with. I think that would be a much more honest approach, a much more honest delivery of what they actually are trying to do. And it is so much easier for fans to get on board with that when they believe in what you're saying. And I think when you're trying to hedge in every direction and say, well, we're not trying to be the worst team in the league. Well, we're not trying to make the play-in. Well, we don't want to be a top 6 seed. It's just like, okay, well then what are you trying to do? And like, what are the expectations you're setting for yourself? Because if you're not doing that, we can't hold you accountable and we don't know what your goals are. And it's really hard to like get on board with a plan that we don't understand.
I don't agree with all of that. I agree with some of it. We're never going to agree on the tanking because I think you can find a franchise player at 7 through 10. Steph Curry has already proved this to me. You can find a franchise player in the top 10. It's a thing. As far as him coming out, I don't know how he can actually say that. And maybe you can articulate it better for me, how you can say, hey, dude, we want to be the worst team in the league. I don't know how you can come out and just say that. And silent Jalen Smith doesn't mean anything to me. That doesn't mean extra wins. It's Jalen Smith.
It prevented them from taking back Harrison Barnes, which would have allowed them to get another pick. And I think when you do that, you are
they're not there forward thinking though, Will.
You're exactly. Your actions are showing that you are not thinking long term.
Yeah. No,
and that is a problem. When you're entering a rebuild, that's a problem.
But that's why I don't hold it on them like that. I know where their brains are. I can't be mad at them that they don't know how to cook when they constantly told me they don't know how. Like, they don't. They suck at it. Yeah. But you're a hell of a chef, Will. And so that's why you're like, what the hell are you doing?
But the thing is, like...
and Matt, too. You know what I mean? Like, you guys are chef.
Like,
I think you absolutely can't be mad at them.
The thing is, like, much of what I'm talking about here is, like, my opinions and speculation based on me reading between the lines on some of this stuff. And when they aren't fully forthcoming about what their plan is, it's hard to be able to articulate what that is, to be able to give that messaging to the fans. And that's part of my responsibility as a beat writer, is to be able to tell what I'm getting. And so a lot of this is speculation. I think that's problematic in some ways. And I hope that like we can continue to develop those relationships so that I can be at least more accurate and more confident in what I'm saying.
Let them in.
But the point is, like, I think when you're doing that it's not just the words. And I agree with you. He's not going to come out and say at the post game or at the post-season press conference, like, we're going to tank this year. We're going to keep our pick. You can't say that. But some people do say that. And I know it's like a taboo thing, but even if you don't come out and say it, you look at some of these teams and it's like their actions back that up. Mm-hmm. When you are the Brooklyn Nets and you trade Mikal Bridges for 5 first-round picks, and then you turn around and trade picks to get your picks back, what does that signal? It means you are tanking because the value of your own pick is really important to you here.
Because we got rid of Mikal Bridges for sure.
Same thing with like a lot of these other teams. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be verbal, but it's like even the actions themselves, even the moves that they've made, some of them signal, well, we actually still kind of want to be good and build this young core. And some of them signal, we aren't thinking at all about the future, because if we were, we would have gotten draft picks here. We would have created space to be able to take on bad contracts in order to get picks. So it's just like, again, it's very much in the middle. And I think when you play in the middle, there's too many really good teams out there, and there's too many teams that are trying really hard to be bad. And so where does that leave you? In the middle. And where do you not want to be in basketball? In the middle.
Alexander in the comments saying there's no evidence that shows P. Will, Io, Giddey, Dalen, or even Kobe can be a superstar player. Good, not great. This organization needs a great talent. Flex Diggs chiming in saying it's not about Zach and Vooch anymore with regard to that Eversley quote saying, yeah, they're still here. Sports Chicago style saying pick a lane. And I think that to me is my biggest issue, and I think what you've also articulated well as well, Will, which is like they're hedging in multiple different directions. And they said, we got to make some changes. We know we got to make some changes. And they have made some changes, but have those changes put them in a more concretely defined path and direction that will benefit them in the long run. They're saying it's not going to be a quick fix. It's going to be a pragmatic approach. Might take a while. But the thing about, and like, I know, Dave, you might not entirely agree with that, as you've stated before, with what Alexander said, saying, hey, there's a young crop of players. Some of them are good. Some of them are pretty darn good, might get better. There is no superstar in this group of young players, so what are we doing?
Yeah. Well, I'll disagree with that.
No, well, I think maybe especially with Kobe, you have said, I can't confidently say that he can't turn into XYZ level of star player.
Okay, then let me specify by talking about the year we're talking about then.
Right, yeah.
I don't think there's a superstar player that's going to come out and be that this year that we're looking at right now.
Okay.
For these young guys. I don't think Kobe's turning into one next year. I don't think Io's turning into one. I don't think Modest is turning one next year. When I have those thoughts and things about Kobe, that's stuff that's further down the line. But that's the stuff Will is like, well, dude, I'm trying to get out of this shit now, because if he does, you're going to have to pay him. You know what I'm saying? So I understand what Elijah gets. Yeah. I get it. But when I'm talking about next year, I'm talking about that. Like, I don't see the superstar coming then out of any of this young core. I just think they're going to be bad and they're going to lose and they're going to end up in the lottery.
I know we've got to go to break here in a second, but I do want to add that, like, I think part of the reason why they are kind of in this holding pattern is because they still have Zach and Vooch on the roster and they can't seem to get them off. So it's hard to commit fully when you've got $80 million of Zach, Vooch, and Lonzo on the roster that you ultimately aren't going to want to have in 2-3 years' time, really ideally now, and you can't do anything with that space because you can't get those guys off. And you're trying to be bad, so you can't use picks to get off of them. So I understand the constraints that they have on them, self-imposed, but I understand, and I think this year in a lot of ways is going to be a feeling out period where they have to figure out what do they have in the young guys, how can they get off of the older guys, and where do they move forward from here. So I think they need a plan. I don't think they necessarily have a specific concrete line by line
thing, do not.
But I think that by the end of this year they need to, and that they can at that point.
Sean Sharp in the comments saying, I feel like they very clearly picked the lane of being bad. This is like the 14th best roster of the East. They've picked a lane. I think plenty of Bulls fans would disagree and say, this team could win 37 games.
They've definitely sent those messages in.
I
mean, I'm like, no, bro.
Some Bulls fans worrying about the fact that they might not be bad enough to tank, and then some Bulls fans being like,
I'm just like, they ain't going to be good.
Yeah. Slap Clap saying in the comments, tired of giving this front office excuses. They should be thinking long-term. Will is correct. BDB saying, meanwhile, Zozak and Kobe or Io. Scary scoring lineup, in my opinion. P. Will makes a jump. People might be shocked. I like how you just threw Lonzo Ball in there as if it's like, oh, yeah, we're going to get the old version of Lonzo back. Okay. But speaking of the fact that Zach is still here, that is the thing that came next in Jamal Collier's column that we will talk about on the other side.
FOCO!
FOCO for the Lolo?
Oh, for the Lolo for show. Matty Go-Go. So get fitted out in the best sports gear around. Where you do that at? You do that at FOCO. Hoodies, shoes, signs, bobbleheads, and everything in betwixt. You go into a basketball game or a hockey game, we'll show your love with your team-branded friendship bracelets. Hello. Whether it's jackets, beachwear, or even overalls. I'd like to see Will Gottlieb rock some overalls. There is something for fans for almost every occasion. And, of course, the set decorations that they hooked us up with. Take our eyes off of this beautifulness and focus behind us and look at that awesomeness right there, because that is from FOCO. And since they showed us love, you can show them some too, man. Those donated pieces. Check out FOCO.com or click the link in the description below for all non-presale items. Use the promo code CHGO10 for 10% off, because it's FOCO. Faux show.
Can we make Matty Go-Go? Just add that. No one ever has called me Matty as a nickname, but Matty Go-Go I can get behind. You know what else I can get behind is the wonderful fun and money-making fun that I have when I use that Circus Sportsbook. Always offering those tight money line splits and their low hold model, striving to have starting odds at -110 for your point total over-unders, for your game spreads, for your money lines. Unlike a lot of other sports books these days who use those starting odds as a way to push to -115 or -120 and keep more money in their pocket than yours for no good reason at all, but not at Circa. Almost always -110. They also don't limit players based on their winnings. Every player has the same limits, unlike other sports books who limit their winning players. Circa encourages bettors to download and explore, of course, their Circus Sports Illinois app, because it's great, but any sports betting and sportsbook app that's available to you, they know that you have lots of choices as a sports bettor these days. They're confident more often than not you will find a better user experience, better gameplay, better odds, better values at Circa compared to their competitors, and they know, without a doubt, you will find the best customer service. Real people behind that Circus Sports brand who resolve any issues you might have with their app in a timely fashion, unlike those other sports books who use the dreaded chatbots.
Yeah.
Fight the machines. All aspects of the app are being run by the same team that run their main Circus Sportsbook at Circa Resort and Casino in Las Vegas. I miss it already. Download the Circus Sports Illinois app at circusports.com/Illinois-app to sign up today. If you or someone you know may have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. That's 1-800-426-2537. Text GAMB to 833-234 or visit areyoureallywinning.com.
I got to do this for Greg, because he asked me to give an update, because he will be listening on the podcast to find an update. Okay. Hey, Herb, who won the 3-on-3? Serbia won the 3-on-3 against the USA. I'm sorry, Greg.
Wonderful. Does Joker also play on the 3v3 team, or
no?
Just the 5-on-5 team?
They definitely have Bizarro Joker, a bootleg Joker on their team.
They got a bootleg Joker?
Yeah, that's not a good thing. I don't mean that in a good way.
Oh,
yeah, it was pickup basketball. That's what it was. And pickup basketball is bad when you're slowing it in slow motion.
Yeah.
People that does not make it look better when they're making those moves to the bucket. But yeah, they took a loss. We'll see what Jimmer Fredette and the crew come back with. Yeah, they need some more people. How you ain't holler at Ice Cube? Seriously, he's right there. Talk to him. Get some stars. As Will told you, you can't win without stars.
Ice Cube knows people, man.
Yes.
When it comes to 3v3 basketball,
he knows a couple.
He knows some people.
Mm-hmm.
Couple of little minor, scrap heap free agent Woj bombs while we were on break, real quick. Free agent guard Devontae Graham agreeing on a 1-year deal with the Portland Trail Blazers.
Good for him.
Graham had a 46-game season with the Spurs, or has played 46 games over the past 2 seasons with the San Antonio Spurs. Also, over the break, Woj tweeting, Precious Achiuwa has agreed on a 1-year, $6 million deal to return to the Knicks.
And
wow, he's going back? Oh, yeah, the Knicks are loading up, baby.
And Dom Barlow, who was a guy who I liked as a potential 2-way option, signs a 2-way with Atlanta Hawks.
There you go. Okay, so diving back into Jamal Collier's long and far-reaching ESPN Plus column from earlier today about the Bulls offseason, what Eversley's had to say about it and such. Then there was like the Zach LaVine section of Collier's column, and things got real weird. A couple of new tidbits about the LaVine trade request that wasn't quite a request in this column that we haven't heard before, or at least haven't heard phrased this way before.
Okay.
Starting with this from Jamal Collier. It was short of a full trade request, but it still irked Karnisovas, sources tell ESPN, a slight perceived as LaVine not being committed to sticking with the team. LaVine also annoyed the organization with his decision to have season-ending surgery in February, a decision the Bulls were sure to note in a news release was a route chosen by LaVine and his agent Rich Paul instead of rehabbing with the hopes to play the rest of the season. So the thing about the making it clear it was Zach and Rich Paul's decision for the surgery, that we had kind of heard that before. Callie mentioned it in the column earlier this offseason. But the thing about AK being irked by Zach's trade request that wasn't quite a trade request, when the rumors that were flying around about Zach being traded for years were because the Bulls were shopping him and not because Zach or his people started those trade rumors and he was constantly asked to respond to them.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, I don't find that fair. Every year Zach was answering those questions every year about being traded. And he always was very professional about it. There's one of the things we complimented him on his show several times about just how professional he handled these kind of situations. And he was like, well, you can't control this stuff. Your name's going to come up in rumors, these kind of things, got to go down. That's my Zach LaVine, by the way. It's good. Thank you, Joey. But yeah, man, like Zach always took that kind of high road, you know what I mean? And it didn't seem like it. So when he finally comes to you and tells you, look, guys, come on. Like, let me get out of here. It's time to move on. Let's do something different. What? You know what I mean? You're talking about betrayal and all these other kind of weird things. Like, no, bro, that's business. You know what I mean? Now, the season of surgery, I don't know the ins and outs on that. Will might know more than I do.
I mean, he had a loose bone in his foot.
But it sounds like, yes, if you can't run and you're struggling to do those kind of things, you get surgery. You know what I'm saying? To help that and maybe help your career moving forward. I have no problem with him making that decision either. Because when he was on the floor, did he look like he was comfortable? Did he look like he was okay out there? It didn't look like it to me. Whether he was pouting and doing all that stuff, regardless, it still didn't look like the Zach LaVine that we all kind of know that can get you 25, 5, and 5. So if he felt like that surgery was going to help him, have the surgery, do your thing. I understand it. But I don't know about it irking him and, bothering him. Like, come on, dog. Like, this is the business. Because if he got traded the next day, you hear me saying the same thing. It's a business. This is what it is, bro. It's how you got to deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, that piece about it was short of a full trade request, but it still irked Karnisovas. It's like they were trying to trade him, and then he said, okay, yeah, let's work together on finding me a good destination. And that bothers him. It's like Game of Thrones, except for like G League level. It's like
House of Dragon?
Not even. I mean, it's just like, what are we doing here? And like, I don't know. I do really feel for Zach. I also understand the frustration from the Bulls' perspective. Like, they wanted to move him. He was like, okay, let's get moved. Clearly, there were not a lot of options out there.
Sure.
Detroit comes up. All of a sudden, he has a surgery. You can like say that was related to that being a destination related to him having the surgery or not. I'm not sure what the answer to that is. But clearly, he took the elective surgery. It was, as far as I can understand, not related to the injury that he was having. This was a loose body that he had been dealing with since like childhood that he wanted to get fixed so that he could come back fully healthy, basically going into this season. My guess, speculative, is like, okay, if you're Zach, you want to get traded, but you are coming up to the deadline and they're asking you to play a different style of basketball where you're sitting in the corner, where you're running up and down, getting off the ball quick, and it's not working for you.
Yes.
And you already wanted to leave, and they already wanted to get rid of you. But the only place you could go is Detroit, and you don't really want to go to Detroit. Maybe you say, okay, we'll get the surgery, we'll shut it down, and we'll try again this summer. Now, the problem is they couldn't trade him this summer.
Correct.
And I think this is a complete failure on the part of Clutch, on the part of not like the individual parties, but just on the relationship and working together. I think the fact that this has gotten to be as public a thing as it is has really worked against both sides.
I agree.
Because it makes Zach look bad, and it makes the Bulls have zero leverage in trying to move a guy that they desperately want to move. So just an all-around failure, I think, from all parties, Zach, Clutch, and the Bulls. But this is the bed that they have made, and now they've got to lay in it. And it's looking like they're going to have to lay in it for a while because there's just no team interested in Zach. I will say, this summer, I think, is an artificially depressed marketplace where you have teams that are terrified of this impending doom that is the second apron.
Okay.
Teams don't want to be super expensive. Teams want to shed space. Teams already didn't have a lot of space, so they don't want to spend. That means there's not a lot of action and movement in terms of trades, in terms of free agency this year. I do think that once we get into the second apron era and teams know what it's like, they actually are in it or out of it, I think there will be some more action. I think Zach will be more easily moved. The problem is you have to go through another year of basketball in order to get to that point. And it's a year of time where you're trying to develop young guys and you can't fully commit to that because you can't fully get off of those guys from your roster. So it's just, you are in purgatory this year. And I don't see a way out of it. I don't think the Bulls do, and that's why they haven't done anything. I don't think Zach does, and that's why he's got to come back and play. But it is just a bad situation. There's no two ways about it. Hopefully they can get something done by the deadline, maybe sooner. But, I mean, you could be looking at a situation where, like, Zach is on this team at the same time next year, and they're like, well, what do we do? Nobody wants it.
So we got a lot of Bulls fans in the comments chiming in on the Zach LaVine stuff. But before we get to your comments, I kind of wanted to get through the rest of the context that Collier provided in his column in case you missed it. Because there's also stuff about Billy Donovan in there, because I see people in the comments talking about Billy. Billy Donovan, per Jamal Collier, believes he's been trying to get LaVine to buy into a more team-friendly playing style, according to sources, emphasizing the way the Bulls competed in LaVine's absence last season as evidence for the team's potential if LaVine fits within the system. Donovan flew to L.A., added Collier, for a few days in July to spend time with LaVine and continue to invest in their relationship, the feedback from which was positive per sources. And that's on the heels of the other talk from earlier this offseason about Billy and Zach not getting along and Zach still being bitter and mad at Billy and mad about being called out in team film sessions and all of that stuff. And then on the heels of that, there is one more quote from an anonymous Bulls source in this Collier column that I found fascinating. Joey, if you want to throw that one up for the viewers on YouTube. Quote, Zach's never won. He's done it his way the whole way and never won. If he's interested in winning, he'll do what's asked of him. And if he's motivated to not be here, one way is to come, be compliant, and be who he is. End quote. And again, that is an anonymous Bulls team source, according to Jamal Collier's report, ESPN Plus, earlier this morning. What the F? And more importantly, who the F?
Well,
working within the Bulls organization said this about Zach LaVine, and maybe they knew they were on the record or maybe they didn't, but this is your star who's disgruntled and you're trying to trade and can't trade, and you're out there just blasting him. What is this?
Yeah, for me, it just sounds like shut up and play.
It really does.
When I read that, that's what I hear when I see that. And
Be compliant?
Be compliant, shut up, fall in line, and we'll get the stuff. Kiss my ass with that kind of.
Is this indentured servitude? What the hell? What the hell kind of phrase is that?
1B, shout out to Joey for that picture. That picture was amazing. Also, great picture, Joey. Yeah, I dug it. But yeah, I don't. You're trying to trade him. You're trying to get him off your team. And so to come out and say something like this in a column on ESPN, to say something like this and then be like, we're trying everything we can do.
Going back to the 1901 Project, they're so bad at everything.
yeah, man. It's terrible. And it's horribly worded. It's a terrible time to say it. You can keep stuff like that to yourself. That's not the stuff you want to be leaking out. I don't care, anonymous or not. You don't want to be leaking that kind of shit out right now, dog. Not when you're trying to trade him. That doesn't help you at all.
Maybe whoever said it was trying for it to sound motivational. Like, hey, Zach, you want out? Go out there and play and prove you can be a team player and, yada, yada, yada.
And tell Zach. Then go sit to him. Zach doesn't strike me as somebody who will find that as motivation.
It's accusatory. This quote makes it sound like Zach has been selfish his whole career. He's done it his way the whole time, and he's never won.
Yeah, I don't like it.
Why? Because X. He's done it his way the whole time and has never won. That is such an accusatory statement.
Yeah, I agree. I don't like that shit, bro.
Absolutely weirdly worded. But at the same time, it is kind of what we have been saying, right? Which is that Zach has to know at this point that the only way for him to get moved is for him to come in and play well and prove he can be a second or third option.
Sure.
Because that's what he's going to have to be, an overpriced second or third option. And I think it's possible. He's obviously talented enough to do it, but like that's the harsh reality that he has to live with. So if you soften it up and sugarcoat it, maybe it's like a little bit nicer for him to hear and he'll fall in line. Maybe he just needs to hear it that way. I don't know. I don't know Zach well enough to know the answer to that. But my point is, it's the truth. He's going to have to be he's going to have to play a certain style in order to prove to teams now that he's worth trading for. And I will say this.
Sure.
If you have that mentality of like, he's been here this whole time and he's never won, it's like, that's kind of on you too. Because you've been here putting the team together. And I'm not sure who said it, but like, you didn't have to sign Zach to the max. And you didn't have to like give him every penny and the player option and all this extra stuff. Like the trade kicker, like that makes him harder to move. So like it's on you too, the Bulls.
Yeah.
And I think this is all in all, like one of the biggest like failures that I can recall when it comes to like the explosive, and it's not like James Harden with the Nets or with the Sixers or with the Rockets times 3. But it's like, how can you have let it get to this point? It really is just damaging for the Bulls as much as it is for LaVine.
Yeah.
And they are just going to have to realize that like they have a common enemy here. And like, if you have a common enemy, then you have to become friends.
Oh,
so
bars over here.
They're going to have to get it together and figure this out for a year.
And I have no problem with truth, especially hard truths. That is my jam. I love hard truths. I love telling them and I love receiving them because you're going to know where someone stands. My thing about a hard truth is I'm not going to tell somebody else the hard truth and do it anonymously. I'm going to tell you. I'm not going to put it in an article and then, hide behind it because that for me takes away from some of the truth because you're leaving stuff up to interpretation because everybody can interpret it. You see how I interpreted it when I saw it. Might not have been how you have interpreted it when you saw it. But it ain't for us. It's for him. So if it's for him, you go tell him. You don't come and put it in the magazine for us to read and discuss and figure out and dissect. That's where it gets all mixed up and murky, and that's why I have an issue with it. Don't have a problem with the truth, just how it's delivered.
They just keep shooting themselves in the foot. Anthony in the comments saying, last time I checked, it takes more than one person to win, so I'm assuming Zach has single-handedly ruined the Chicago Bulls despite the fact that owners are effing trash. Also, I'm not buying it. Coach Eyes saying, why are we ripping Zach at this point? The organization didn't win, not to mention you do want to trade him, right? Sean Sharp saying, blaming Zach is hilarious to me. In my opinion, Zach was never a guy you build around. He's a third star. Blaming a third star for not leading perennial playoff teams is crazy to me.
That's a great point. I didn't even think of that one right there. Yeah, no one was looking at him as the guy. Well, at least I should say we weren't looking at him.
And some Bulls fans would say that, well, you're paying him like a number one guy.
Yeah, we paid him what he was worth on the market at the time that he got his check.
Yeah, and again, the rules changed too. Like, it was okay to have 2 to 3 max players on your roster.
Correct.
When you saw the cap going up and there was no aprons. Now it's different, and that's the reality of the situation. So you have to figure out how to work around it. You can't just like shut down and cower in the corner until like life happens to you. You have to get out ahead of this. And clearly they've missed their chance to do it. So now you've got to figure out a way to make it work for another year or more. I mean, is there a world where like they can't do it again next year? And now you're looking at year 4 of this Zach max out of 5. And then maybe Zach is like, do I really want to just like not pick up my $50 million player option so that I can get a longer term deal and just get the hell out of here?
Yeah.
Like it's messy, damaging right now.
Joey, I saw you trying to slide and say something, man. Did you want to say something?
No, nothing crazy. I just, at this point, I feel like it's swayed too far, way too far, and that Zach is sort of getting, and I know it's what we've been saying, but just that Zach's sort of getting the raw end of the bargain, and especially after hearing in this anonymous source, like, yeah, he never really fully asked for the trade. Like, that was sort of how it came off to me at the beginning. It wasn't a full-on trade request. It was a weird sort of middle ground, and I
call BS on that one, but
that's just what I'm saying. I think Zach has been, and I think the points that were just made, I'm not sure why winning falls all on him when I think a lot of Bulls fans were quick to say, well, he can't be your number one guy. So I'm not really sure why the fact that he's never won as the number one guy is totally his fault. And I just think that, yeah, for everything we said, how professional he had been in his time with the Bulls, it just seems like he's almost getting the raw end of the stick here.
Raw deal.
When you look at like major inflection points in the history of the Chicago Bulls. The last 10 years. It's like trading Jimmy Butler, obviously for Zach, Lowry, and Chris Dunn. And then I think there was another one in 2021, maybe, when they traded for Vooch at that deadline. And Zach was coming off an All-Star appearance. He was making $18 million a year. Like, you had Wendell, Lowry, Kobe, Patrick. You had a chance to keep another top 5-ish pick had you not traded for Vooch. Like, I think that is the opportunity cost there. I know it was like probably never going to happen. That's what I would have done in the situation was instead of trade for Vooch, trade away Zach. You could have gotten 2 or 3 picks at that point and a young player. You get that young player, multiple picks in that draft. You could have gotten Franz Wagner, Jonathan Kuminga. You could have gotten Josh Giddey then. You could have gotten Scotty Barnes, Jalen Suggs, Evan Mobley, Jalen Green, Cade Cunningham. That draft was absolutely loaded. And you add those guys to Kobe and Ayo and Patrick and Wendell and Lowry. Maybe you move on from some of them. Maybe you keep some of them. But, like, to me, that's the kind of core that you're after. And I think that until they really – and that wouldn't have been a full teardown either because you still have a bunch of good young pieces. But, like, to me, that's the situation you're after. You're after a team with a lot of good players and a lot of picks. And the Bulls continue to not get that for themselves. And it's like, no wonder you're still stuck in the middle. And then you give guys – contracts that aren't movable, and you give guys like deals that are just 20% more than what they would get from any other team, and that stuff adds up. And now all of a sudden you're in a spot where your hands are tied behind your back because you can't do anything with the pieces that you want to. And so I don't think there's a way out of it this summer. That's by design, unfortunately, but that's where they are. And I think this piece, like, as they try to explain what it is that they're trying to do, it reinforces to me that they are trying to do too many things at once. And when you are a jack of all trades, you are a master of none.
The other interesting thing, talking about what if Zach is still just stuck here in perpetuity, that Eversley said in this column from Jamal Collier, and he mentioned something that you also were talking about with the injury specifically, Dave, saying the most unfortunate situation for Zach last year was he got hurt. Coming out of the camp, he wasn't right. Him going down early in the season proved that. And I think most Bulls fans saw that with their own eyes. The Zach LaVine we saw to start last season did not look like two-time All-Star Zach LaVine.
Did not.
Eversley continued saying when he came back, he was pretty good, and the team was pretty good. Geez, don't oversell while we're trying to rebuild this player's trade value, Mark. Small sample size, but we can build off of that. Simply put, we're looking forward to having Zach come back to training camp and joining the team. Marc Eversley. It's like, how many different ways can we undercut the trade value of our own player in one interview? Is it possible? Blast Beats in the comments saying something else is going on here. Getting Zach's value up doesn't exist here. He's been in the league long enough that everyone knows what he is. There is no getting his value up. And see, that I think is something that some Bulls fans believe and that I refuse to believe. In the landscape of NBA realities, it is not impossible for Zach LaVine's trade value to increase from where it is now, assuming he is out there playing NBA games in a Bulls jersey come October 2024.
Sure.
I think the reason that some Bulls fans believe it is impossible is because every time we hear a new quote or read a new piece of news about the Zach LaVine trade market, it seems like the Bulls are doing everything in their power to lower his trade value. And I'm not accusing them of trying to lower their own player's trade value. I'm saying that's how bad they are at this. So anytime we read something new about Zach LaVine's trade market, it's, oh, he has none. And then you hear the Bulls say something else that makes them and him look worse. Shouldn't be the case. I don't think it is the case with 29 other NBA teams, but that's why no one thinks that he can raise his trade value here. Because we keep reading and hearing dumb shit like this.
In the summertime, more than any time, I think, in my opinion, in the NBA, perception is reality. Because you can't really point to anything that player is doing.
Can't prove it.
On the floor. Exactly. It's nothing you can really prove. You can't say, well, dude, look what he just did for the last 14 games on the floor. Like, look at the stats, look at the skill. You can't point to nothing. It's all speculation. So whatever the perception is, that is going to be the reality amongst everybody in the landscape. And I'm including fans in that too. Amongst everybody in the landscape, that is what it's going to be. So Matt is completely correct. You consistently are telling people and made it known that a trade needs to happen and must happen. You got to do these things. And also the rumored demands that I was hearing, what they wanted from his going back.
Well, also throwing him under the bus saying, it was him and his agent who chose surgery.
Exactly.
That wasn't us.
Exactly. But I'm
making
saying,
your player look bad.
Stuff like that. Like, you're making him look bad with your demands on what you want for him, acting like I said, he had no cachet for y'all to even think that he would get that in the trade market. But on top of that, you go ahead, he got a guy who has the surgery, your team plays a little better, and then you still come out like, well, you better get your ass out here and play. And that's the only way this thing is going to work. Shut your mouth and get out here and sit down. None of that looks great. And it's all about the perception. Doesn't matter the fact right now. It's about the perception. That's how people see it. That's it's like how they say art is left up for interpretation.
Yeah.
You might have meant one thing when you painted that, but all somebody's like, hey, that's a stick. You know what I mean? Well, no, it actually means, you know what I'm saying, it shows the depressing nature of man and how it's a stick. That's what we're going to see. That's how it goes. So the perception is the reality in this case, unfortunately, and they just keep shooting themselves over and over again. It's like a bad cartoon, bro. He was like Wile E. Coyote continuing to shoot itself in the damn foot over and over again with either words or actions. They're covering it on both ways. You know what I mean? They're trying to sound tough, look tough, but it all plays to what Will was talking about in the middle, because this is all stuff you do when you're in the middle. And you're not, like you said, taking an actual stance about what you want to do and what you want to be. Then you float these kind of things out there because everything is up for grabs. You know what I mean? Like, if you had a section, you knew we're going to do it this way, you know how to speak to get your stuff to go this way. We're going strictly for championships. You know how to speak when you're going strictly for championships. You know the actions you take when you do that. If you're saying we just want to stink and be ass, you know what to do and what to say to do those things as well. When you're trying to do both, it won't work. It just
hard
simply
to give
won't
the
work.
messaging and make it sound meaningful. But look, here's the thing with Zach is like, there's a couple of different reasons why his value and his perception around the league tanked the way it did, right? The injury prone thing, he wasn't on the court. He was hurt. The impact thing, the team was playing better without him, and he played poorly when he was out there. The contract thing, he is overpaid. And then on top of that, the rules changed. So these two, you're not going to really be able to change. You can't really change the rules, and you can't really change how much he's making right now. What you can change is him being on the court and playing and not being hurt. So you take those two away, you're left with just two more things. It's his contract and the salary cap environment. And by him playing, that can make it look like there's a less of a delta between how much he's making and what his actual value is based on his production, right? So if he, based on his actual production, is worth $27 million a year and he's making 43, there's $16 million difference between what he's making and how much he's producing. So if he can get that up to $30 million a year, now there's only 13. If he can get up to 35, now there's only 8. And it's like, you need to be able to play in order to do that. So I do think that just by virtue of him being on the court, healthy and playing, he will take away two of the things that are going against him right now. And he has a chance to improve the third one. And so I do think that will help. But ultimately, it's like, the rules are what the rules are. And there are going to be teams that are too afraid to go near the aprons. They're not going to deal with it. So you're dealing with a smaller amount of potential suitors out there. On top of that, you're dealing with an already small amount of people who are trying to win and trying to add. So there's just not a lot of people out there. But as long as he's playing well, I do think he's got a chance to improve his value. Maybe that doesn't translate into anything, but I think that's the bet that he and Clutch and the Bulls are making this year, because that's the only bet they can make.
It's the only thing you can control.
They're going to the roulette table, and all the tiles are red.
And in the meantime, as much as the Bulls and their brass ownership and front offices over decades have preached about the values of keeping things in their building and trusting the people in our building, somebody in their building leaked a quote basically calling Zach LaVine a selfish loser while they're trying to trade him. So great job. I mean, I think that there's plenty of blame to go around in how poorly this has gone. Yeah. And I don't love some of the moves that Zach and Clutch Sports and Rich Paul have made in this endeavor of trying to get him moved.
Matching hoodies.
Right. And I also think that the Bulls front office have, shot themselves in the foot with this several times over. And some Bulls fans want to blame Billy for benching him one time and misusing Zach LaVine and,
let that go.
Getting, like going away from the, hey, let's play faster, let's play more up-tempo, let's play free-flowing offense that might benefit a Zach LaVine more so, and then reverting back to, oh, well, no, just kidding. We're going to go back to plotting ISO DeMar because that continues to prove to be the most efficient way we score points. So I am curious. But, I mean, up until the part about be compliant, like I was reading that quote and I was like, is this quote from Billy? And they're just not attributing it to Billy because they don't want to attribute it to Billy? Because, like, I don't think Billy would be, like, clapping back at Zach if Billy has been reading things recently in the news like, hey, Zach doesn't like Billy, and Zach is mad at Billy for X, Y, and Z. Billy doesn't seem like the kind of guy who would fire back anonymously like this to say, hey, Zach's not a winner, and he doesn't play team basketball.
Nothing about his career said that.
But before that quote, the anonymous Bull source quote, in that same column from Jamal Collier, the same report, there were a couple of paragraphs about Billy Donovan and the nitpicking problems he has with Zach LaVine and how he plays. It's amazing. It's a puzzle, and I don't know what the hell we're doing.
Whoever it came from, it's not good.
It's not good.
It's not good at all, bro. Sucks.
They need to like hire a third-party consultant firm to like help them like figure out how to manage this, because it's just like there's no way out. So you need like couples therapy. You need to figure out how to make it work, because like unless you guys are presenting the best versions of yourselves, you're not going to be appealing to anybody else on the market. So like, why would another team want to bail the Bulls out on this? Why would they want to accept Zach for less than 1 or 3 or 5 first-round picks? And if you're a team interested in Zach, like why would we want to trade for you? You're not playing well. The team's better without you. You're making way too much money. Like, I understand why there isn't a market for him right now. I think there's path for that to change, but I also think that both parties need to get on board with what is our plan. And again, it goes back to like, I know it's difficult to make a 3 to 5 year plan when you still have these giant contracts on your books, but it's a lot harder to follow a path towards something when you don't have a plan of how to get there. And like, I think it just, you make a plan and you follow it to the best of your ability, and you can change it as needed. But like, there just does not seem to be a team building plan, a long-term plan for finding the next star player, a plan for getting off of Zach, a plan for getting off of Vooch. It's just like, we'll wait and see. And like, that's not productive.
You know what it is?
It hasn't been, at least.
You know, it was us on the plane back from Vegas, getting back on time, and us still having to wait because it was everybody was in the terminal. Like, you know, it was a plane and everything. We couldn't go anywhere. Didn't matter if we were there on time. Right. And all there. If you got nowhere to put us, we have to wait. And we got to sit around and wait, and people on there do silly stuff when that happens. That's what this kind of reminds me of. That's honestly what this reminds me of, man. You got there in time. You're like, oh, we got Buzelis. Oh, we made these trades. Oh, we got a little worse. We made these things. Zach's still here. Lonzo's still here. Yeah. Vooch is still here. You can't move forward and park and let people off because you got to get that out the way.
Hedging in every direction.
Yeah, man.
And that's kind of how Collier wrapped up his long column that covered so many bases, was like, Zach and everyone within the Bulls is remaining professional about this for now. Ooh. How long will for now last? The longer that Zach is still here, taking touches, taking shots, taking focus away from Giddey, away from Modest Buzelis getting minutes as a rookie, and away from this youth movement that Eversley and Arturas are so excited about and so excited to talk to Bulls fans about.
But you can't start it.
How long into the season will everyone involved remain professional?
We'll see.
Because it's a ticking time bomb.
Yes, it is. We'll be here.
Hey, well, we're out of time for now. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. In the meantime, hit the like button on your way out. If you're catching us on YouTube, we appreciate it. Make sure you also subscribe to that CHGO Sports YouTube channel. Sign up for that CHGO Kickoff Classic, August 23rd, coming up, Cog Hill.
On the way. Golf carts, fun prizes, golf carts. I'm not going to swing, but I'll go hang out. You'll go hang. Diehards get discounts. In the meantime, go Will_Golly, Big Day Bow, BAWL Sports. Our panel producer on the controls, the one and only Joey Spathis at Joey Spathis. I'm Bulls_Peck. We are CHGO_Bulls. Have a great Tuesday night. We'll talk to you tomorrow, 4 p.m. Central. See you, Ray. Be good. Burke Brothers in the house. Peace.